Hello, welcome to The Story Matters, and it really does matter. It always matters. And we are so grateful today to have time with Dick Thodal, and this is a special time for him and for his guest, Chris Olson. And we are going to deal with the fact that this is a celebration of Dick's woodlot. And Dick, we are very pleased that you can come and do this today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lynn. It's great to be back here and great to have this opportunity to talk a little bit. I apologize for my faceplant here. I did not take a right cross from Evander Holyfield. I've been involved in a family woodlot now for quite a while. And so one time in the past, I guess it was, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, George Bellerose came out when Chris Olson and I were out in the woodlot and took a series of pictures of us in the woodlot. So we just like to show a little montage of those pictures, and then I'll introduce Chris. So that gives you an idea of what's out there in the woodlot. Our woodlot is on South Munger Street and in Middlebury, and we have 31 acres in the use value appraisal system, which is the only way that we could continue to really be stewards of that particular piece of woods. I have worked with, at this point, 3 Addison County foresters. I started off working with Tom Baer back in the 70s, and then when David Brin took over, I worked with him for years. And now Chris Olson is the Addison County forester, and he's also my neighbor. So Chris is here with us today, and Chris has a series of questions that hopefully will give a good idea of what it is that the use value appraisal system does, and what Sally and I, Sally being my wife, have been trying to do in our woodlot in particular. So I'd like to introduce Chris Olson.
Really nice to be here with Dick and the crew. It's special moment for me because my kids will think I'm famous, and or maybe not so infamous. And so the questions, I have a few different questions about your woodlot, Dick, that I think might help people understand the relationship that develops between land and people. And so I guess the one thing about owning land is just sort of the time span. And so can you let us know when was the first time you crossed the Muddy Branch, which is a little stream that starts on your property, and made your way into your woods?
Okay, well, my folks bought that property back in 1960, and I can't remember the first time I went across. I remember that when when they bought it, they told me that this was a great trout stream, and so pretty soon after we got there, I went down to go fishing and discovered that the trout had all gone, and it was really only dace in there. But then, I would wander around in there when I was younger. But the first time I really went in looking at what I might be able to get out of that woodlot for that would do me some kind of good, and looking at it in terms of harvesting something out of the woodlot was when I decided that I wanted to see what kind of firewood was out there. And Sally and I burned wood with no oil heat, nothing else, for over 40 years. And we got an air source heat pump last year. So I would say that the main thing for us really was to get our firewood out every year. And so getting out other logs or something like were all sort of part of the UVA agreement, but getting out firewood was really the main thing. And so I went over to in the early 70s with that in mind, and I remember that particular time, the first time I went, because when I got in there, I looked and I saw, there's no hardwood back here, or there's very little. It's just pretty much all hemlock and pine. But there's some pretty nice pine back in here, and pretty nice hemlock, and I had forgotten what a really neat place this is back here. This is really something. And so, at that time, there really wasn't much in the way of hardwood, and plus the swamp crossing to get across the Muddy Branch was really kind of difficult, and that was something that I had to deal with every year, because I had a window of opportunity to get in there, and the window usually started right after Christmas, when it started to get cold, and I would freeze down a road, just a crossing across the Muddy Branch, and that would include like a little bridge of some sort, which could be made with saplings and ice, although later on I made one out of Roger Destel's and I made one up out of Skidder Bridge, which I use with my tractor. But we would go in this very narrow window of time between the end of December and the beginning until the January thaw, which usually came sometime at the end of January or February, and that's when pretty much all the activity took place over on the other side. So that's sort of the timetable of us getting in there, Chris.
And so, over those years, do you feel like the forest has changed? And if not, why not? Or if so, in what ways?
Well, it's definitely changed with really for a couple of reasons. One reason is a natural issue where we would get some really strong southeast winds, which would blow down a lot of trees, and that had been happening, over the ages, because the ground back in there is what you would call pit and mound, and there's all these hummocks and depressions that show that the trees have been going down there for many, many years. And so that sort of continued, and so we would have trees blow down. Some of those I was able to get out and salvage as logs, and then I also took some logs out and I had a logging operation there in the early 70s, where they got out 30,000 feet. That was the biggest one, and then I had another one in the in the 80s where we took out 5,000 feet, and then I've been taking out like small quantities of logs, ever since with my tractor. But what that has all been done with the idea of selective thinning and trying to improve the character of the woods, and this probably will lead into another question from Chris about some of the techniques that we use to do that.
So, aside from the human activities, has there been natural disturbance of some sort that has shaped the forest?
Well, as I just mentioned, we did those southeast winds. When you get a gust like that, that'll take down those big hemlocks. And another thing that I found was that when I went in and was getting out firewood, and there turns out that there was enough red maple growing in among all the rest of those hard softwoods that I would cut mostly red maple to take out for firewood. But if I took out a red maple, then it would open up. It would create an opening that when the next wind gust came along, those hemlock that were used to having that red maple behind them to absorb some of the force of the wind would just blow over some hemlocks. And that I would say was a natural disturbance that was sort of exacerbated by what I had done to cut. But then with those big gusts, that's all natural.
And did the ice storm of 1998 cause any dramatic changes there, or was it primarily these small sort of microbursts or just regular winds that have disturbed the forest in that way?
Well, that's a great question, and we did not get a lot of damage out of that ice storm. And I remember taping a presentation by a forest pathologist about the ice storm, and she was completely confused about the patterns of where there was significant damage and where there wasn't, because it didn't really fit in with what they would have expected. So we lucked out on that one.
It's nice to have some good luck in your woods like that, especially when you have difficult constraints like access issues and that sort of thing. Can you describe some of the residents of the forest that live there full time, or you've seen passing through? Has there been any? There must be some regular residents, and then also some surprise appearances.
Well, of course, there's always the deer, and I would say that you could pretty much count on the fact that there's a doe and a couple of yearlings or fawns that pretty much hang out there. We are surrounded, well, on the east anyway, by big like foster farmland. So there's always some great feed across there, and this can be a refuge for them. And in a really hard winter, in some areas in the woodlot, the hemlocks are really thick, and so that's a great place for the deer to hole up when the snow gets really deep. And that eastern fork of the Muddy Branch does not freeze over. There's always a little bit of open water there, and so the deer can get water and have a safe place to be. There's plenty of coyotes back there, and they weren't always there. They seemed to come in pretty strong maybe 40 years ago, but we hear them all the time. And there's also some at least one barred owl down there, and that barred owl, I think, set some sort of a record this spring for not stopping hooting for 20 for days. It was just constant. I don't know how he kept it up. If that was announcing that he was the master of that territory, or he was looking for a mate, or both. It's probably both. And so there's every now and then, we'll see, in the winter is particularly interesting. We'll see where a bobcat has been in, but I don't see the bobcats with my eye when they're in there. One time we had more than once we've had fisher cats come through, and before my neighbor built his house across the street, his brother had chickens over there, and a fisher cat came through from the mountain and went in and killed all 30 chickens, just left them there, and then went back. And you could have snapped a chalk line from the mountain, to those chickens. That fisher cat was right on the trail. And lately there have been, as you know, Chris, bear have been coming in. They never used to be around so much. I did see moose back there a couple of times. And I'm not a serious deer hunter, but I do take my gun out for a walk during deer season every now and then, and it seems like all the bucks tend to come through at night, because I see all kinds of evidence of them being there with their scrapes and all that. But I've only seen bucks back in there a few times.
Is the habitat suitable for moose?
It's swampy ground, so I don't know that much about what moose really like, but I know that the moose that I've seen out there have been just wading through the swamp and either looking for something or munching on something. You would probably be a better judge than me.
Possibly on their way to somewhere else.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's them. I mean, they probably want to check out any swampy place to see if there's anything that's good for them there.
And so, over the years, it sounds like you've had pretty diverse use of the land, and is the recreation, is that one of the most regular uses of the land? We did, we have a trail that runs around through there, and we used to go around the loop cross-country skiing. I would say the closest thing to recreation is some of the things that I've been able to make out of wood that I got out of there. And I can show you one thing, and then after that I'll show a picture from the past. But for a while, I really got into building longbows, and so this particular bow here is about number 20 of ones that I tried that were based on a design of a bow that was found in a peat bog in Denmark that was 5,000 years old. And so this particular shape was what they did back in the day. And I kept trying to make one that worked, and some of them worked, and then they failed after a while. But this one here I made out of hardhack, and there was a hardhack tree that I kept looking at a bunch of them trying to find a good one. And I did find a good one and made this bow. And this one is about a 50-pound, it's over 50-pound draw, which I can't draw anymore, unfortunately. But this one was a real success, and I got a lot of satisfaction out of doing that. And then another thing that I did was, and this is from 40 years ago, and here's a picture of me there, if you could bring that up, Jim. Yeah, that's me back in 84 or 85, and what I did was I built a chainsaw mill for my partner 5000, and
what I'm doing there is milling out planks for a boat that I was thinking of making, and so this was a pine that was nice straight pine, and I milled out these planks, and then I wanted to do it the way the old timers did. So you can see there's sort of a atavistic thing here. I'm making bows from 5,000 years ago, and then now I'm before that I was making a boat, that was like they used to do for probably the last 1,000 years. But I milled out these planks, and then I built a lapstrake boat, and I used yarn soaked in pine tar, and I made my own rivets and put it all together, and it was a rowboat, a sailboat, and I put a motor on it. And when the kids were little, we used to take it out in Lake Champlain, and it had a really good life. But then, as the kids got older, they lost interest, and it sat upside down in the yard. And my friend Roger Desautel was working on the Battelle Bridge with Tom Vanacore, and they were repointing a lot of the stone in the bridge. And so he needed a boat to be able to get back and forth to where they were working, because they had staging built up under the arches. So I let him borrow my boat, and then we had a big rainstorm, and the water came up, and so when and Roger and Jeff were working there, and they're trying to get their stuff out of there, and the boat had a round bottom, and Jeff stepped on one of the gunnels, and it just all the water came right in, and it pushed the boat up against all the steel pipes in the arch of the bridge, and it just stayed there, pushed up against it was like a dam, and with all this water pushing against it. And then when the water finally subsided, Roger winched it out of there, and all the planks were cracked, but the ribs were still intact, and it survived that, but it was too far gone to fix, so it went out to Salisbury, to Roger's father's burn pile. So I don't know, you got any more questions, Chris?
So has the firewood production, has that changed over the years, or the use or the extraction? Have you been consistently harvesting the same amount to keep your home fires burning over the winter months, or is it evolved over time?
Actually, we've been using less firewood, over the years as I put more insulation in the house, and as things have warmed up a little bit. I still really like red maple as firewood, and of course hardack is wonderful stuff. And getting it out, I've done all kinds of things. I've had some pretty beater old trucks that I've had back in there that I can't believe that I actually got them in there and loaded out, and been in there with different kinds of, early on with like a Ford 8N and other kinds of tractors, and went through the ice, and now I've got this beautiful Kubota, and that was really in the opening sequence, and that thing is just it's just awesome. I built a skid plate for it, and forks, and then just sort of a little roof over the thing, and that makes it so much easier. But I wish I'd had that 40 years ago.
And so as time goes on, do you think that the
that there'll be changes in the way that woodlot is used, or will it just keep on keeping on the way it is?
Well, I think that one of the things that's changed is that now there's been a number of changes. Once the value of stumpage has gone down, and you have a beautiful pine log in there, which isn't really worth that much, and it winds up going to China or something. And it used to be that you would be feeding local industry with this wood, and I worked part-time for Jack Brown for 30 years at his wood products shop out in East Millbury, and I know the way that the wood products can be utilized from local wood, and I really believe in that. But that's become a sort of a thing of the past, and I think now with climate change, the more trees that we can have that are taking carbon dioxide out of the air, the better. And this can be done with different types of woodlots. I know that we didn't get into some of the practices that they're doing, and we are running out of time. We've got to wrap it up, but that's one of the things that we did, was to try to include change the vertical diversity of it. But I guess we're out of time, so I wanted to thank you very much, Chris, for coming in.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thanks, Len, for having us here. So I guess it's so long for now.